I was manifesting in the other Oz.
Absolutely. And we welcome everyone to this community today, because this community is a unique community that has certain power. It will never happen exactly in this way again. And that we hope that today the free spirit that you learn about and that you unleash will take you to positive places in your business and in your life also.
Absolutely, Judy. You said it so well, my beautiful friend.
And now we're going to hear from our guest, and Guinea has the honor of introducing Dr. David Gruder, who is a delightful individual.
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you, Judy. Thank you, Judy. Dr. Gruder, what can I say? It's an honor and pleasure. And you know what, my dear friends, you are in for a very big treat, because Dr. Gruder says we had asked him for his bio, and I'm going to read it because I'll tell you why. Dr. Gruder says for the last fifth decade of his career, Dr. Gruder refers to him as a recovering psychologist and a professional troublemaker. Oh my goodness. We are all in for a big trouble then. Drawing on his dizzying range of leadership training, consulting, and mentoring roles he has filled over the years, he has, he has an award-winning clinical and organizational development psychologist. So many big words. Mainly focuses on equipping leaders and influencers who are called to help repair and elevate the world with the missing spiritual, inner and outer skills to unleash their free spirit and succeed in their calling. Dr. Gruder, it's an honor and pleasure to have you really create the trouble with us right now and learn and really teach us how we can unleash our free spirits and reach to the next level, which you envision all of us can do. Pleasure and honor, Dr. Gruder, all yours.
Well, thank you, Guinea, for a lovely introduction, and thank you both, Judy and Guinea, for inviting me to join you all today. You know, where I want to start is by saying that I grew up not feeling like my free spirit was safe to express. And I've essentially spent my entire life gradually liberating my free spirit more and more until I've arrived as an elder in a state of being a professional troublemaker. And so I say that in starting because I think it's important to me that everyone who aspires to live a free spirit kind of life, if you didn't start off feeling free to be that way, then there's always hope, and more than hope, there's a path, there's a way to move forward. You know, people, as I look back on my years in high school, people actually saw my free spirit even when I thought I was hiding it. One of a number of nicknames that I had in high school, and Judy and Guinea, neither of you know this, was Groovy Gruder. And you know, groovy, of course, was one of those words in the 1960s that was, you know, a cool word. The thing that is important to me to share about being a free spirit, especially having to do with, you mentioned the American dream, is that the version of the American dream that was installed in the 1950s, that is what was called the American dream, really is not a prescription for a free spirit. Now, let me say that again. The 1950s version of the American dream that was called the American dream is not a prescription for a free spirit. And the reason for that is because the 50s version of the American dream recast or redefined the pursuit of happiness as excessive consumption. Now, there's nothing wrong with having stuff and adventures and things like that. Nothing wrong with any of those things at all. But when we define those things as happiness, that's a big problem, because then we have to move into replacing freedom with conformity to a specific version of a good life, having to do with overconsumption. And we have to replace responsibility, social responsibility, which is part of what goes hand in hand with freedom, with overwork. And when we have overconsumption as the new definition of freedom and conformity in order to overconsume and overworking in order to afford overconsumption, that's not a prescription for freedom. So I want to just mention that backdrop in my comments, because for me, as someone who grew up in the 50s and the 60s, a large part of what I had to undo was the loyalty that I was programmed into having, the loyalty to that delusional version of the American dream. So my first step in liberating my free spirit was actually gifted to me by my parents in 1969 at the age of 15, when they sent me to Woodstock. Now, they didn't know what Woodstock was going to be beforehand, because nobody knew what Woodstock was going to be beforehand. But what Woodstock was for me at age 15, I arrived at Woodstock a drug-free virgin. And I swear on a stack of Bibles, I left Woodstock a drug-free virgin. I thought I was there for the music, but what I couldn't have known ahead of time that I was really there for was to experience 500,000 people who were devoted to having each other's backs and expressing some version of freedom that was not the version of the American dream that was the 1950s version of the American dream. And it just cracked me wide open. And my second step in claiming my freedom, in stepping into my free spirit, was learning how to recognize and liberate myself from being under the thumb of my inner critic. Because my inner critic, like everyone's inner critic, I assume you all know what I mean by an inner critic. It's the part of us that shames us and blames others when our expectations are not being met. I had a vicious inner critic, which is really a large part of what was blocking me from expressing my free spirit. So getting the upper hand on my inner critic.
Uh-oh.
I think, are we all facing the same thing, Dr. Gruder's connection? Okay.
Oh, there he is. You're back, Dr. David.
Oh my. Okay, I'm so sorry. I have, unfortunately, an internet problem where my wired internet to my computer has gone out, and so I'm stuck on Wi-Fi. So my wireless connection is stable, but apparently it's not working as well as we would like. I'm not sure where I froze. Did I freeze for quite a while or just for a moment or two?
Just for a moment, Dr. Gruder, you were talking about the inner critique, shames us and blames others.
Okay.
That's where we left.
Good. So that was my second step in liberating my free spirit, was getting the upper hand on my inner critic. My third step was claiming the right to be audacious. Entrepreneurs, in order to succeed, have to be willing to be audacious, stepping out of the usual mold of thinking and acting and monetizing like an employee. And that's pretty audacious. And, you know, back in the, oh, I think it was the 80s and 90s, one of the phrases around audacity and entrepreneurship was "do what you love, the money will follow." And I just noticed that Barbara said she was at Woodstock also. Yay, Barbara! Woohoo! And you know, the idea of "do what you love, the money will follow" is what I call true but incomplete, because if there aren't specific steps that I take around doing what I love, then the money won't follow. So it's true, do what you love and the money will follow, but it's true but incomplete. And so what I was called to do, because I've been an entrepreneur since 1980, was to really step into something that in Japanese worldview is called ikigai, Ikigai. Somebody might want to type that in the chat box. Ikigai, ikigai. You can look it up on the internet, but it basically has 4 dimensions to it that I think are the key to entrepreneurial freedom and making that whole statement about "do what you love, the money will follow" true and useful, which is ikigai. If you imagine a series of overlapping lines, each of the overlapping circles, rather, each circle, there are 4 circles in ikigai that are overlapping. The first is what you love. The second is what you're good at. The third is what the world needs. And the fourth is what you can be paid for. At the intersection of what you love, what you're good at, what the world needs, and what you can be paid for, that is the magical intersection of audacious entrepreneurship. And so I think that's a valuable thing to keep in mind as an entrepreneur in liberating your free spirit as an entrepreneur. Audacity is disruptive. And because audacity is disruptive, part of having a free spirit means being willing to not always be agreed with, being willing for people to scare people. Now, I don't mean waking up in the morning and saying to myself, how can I scare someone? What I mean is that by modeling a free spirit, by being audacious, there will inevitably be certain people who will be scared by that. So we have to have the willingness, if we want to step into our free spirits, we have to have the willingness not to deliberately scare people, but the willingness for people to be scared by our audacity, by our light, by our freedom. And if we're afraid of people's opinions of us at that level, we're going to clamp down on our light. And, I understand that because I spent a large part of my early life being terrified of that. So feel free to scare people simply as a side effect of the brightness of your light. And I think you wanted me to speak for about 10 minutes, and I think we're at that point. So I think I'll stop here and we can open this up to Q&A.
Thank you, Dr. Gruder. That is absolutely awesome. Do we have any questions? I just love that ikigai. I have never heard of that before, but those intersections to me are just so priceless. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Dr. Gruder, would it be possible for you to send us, after the meeting is over, just a brief note summarizing the 4 points of ikigai so that we'll remember? Because I know that once this is over, I'm not going to remember.
Sure, I can send that to Judy and Guinea, and they can forward it on to everyone who registered to be here today.
That'd be great.
That would be awesome. Also, Mark, the recording of this is going to be available on YouTube.
Oh.
So
Okay,
you'll have that availability also.
Yes, absolutely. It'll be our pleasure to share that, and what a, I always feel universe always responds to what you're asking for. Today, before our event started, Judy and me were just talking about this.